All right, good afternoon. This is Dee Reinhardt with Illinois WorkNet. Today we're talking about recruit and retain salespeople. How can you find and keep the best salespeople to help your business grow? Joining us today, we have a couple of guest speakers. And part of our sessions on starting your business plan is knowing what's included in your business plan and the other essentials that are part of doing business. And today, marketing and sales happens to be one of the big things. And how do you know when you're selling your business the right way? And part of that is having salespeople for your business. So today, our guest speaker is Tim Neff. He is a partner with United Career Fairs. And United Career Fairs actually, I'm going to let Tim tell you a little bit more, but they actually hold career fairs for salespeople, right?
That's right.
Tim, welcome to our webinar.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I actually have on the call with me is my business partner, Dan DeHaan, and we've been doing sales-focused career fairs all across the country now. We're in our 7th year. We do about 16 events a month across the country, as well as staffing people, and the only folks that we staff are sales professionals. So we work with companies that are hiring salespeople all the time, and we work with them in regards to finding them professional salespeople. And then we also have a sales staff ourselves that we lead, and we're constantly hiring for and working to grow. So we know a little bit about sales. So Danny and I have been at this for a while, and we're excited to be able to sort of share some of the information that we've gleaned through trial and error with everybody. So thanks for letting us have your ear for a little bit, and we can just go ahead and get started.
Great, great.
So we want to talk about selling, and I think Danny is going to dive right in here and chat a little bit about what the difference between what selling is and an actual sale. And oftentimes people get them confused. They think that a sale is, something that you buy at Walmart that's on sale. So Danny, why don't you just jump in and sort of take over for a little bit?
Absolutely. Thanks. So let's just start with what selling is and then survey what selling is not. And for many of you, this might be review. I think it's kind of basic, but really what selling is exchanging goods or service for money. And sometimes there's a barter involved where you might get a service in return. But basically, selling is the backbone of every single business. We have pretty broad exposure to lots of different businesses, business services, businesses that actually manufacture parts, all sorts of businesses all rely heavily upon sales, and that generates the revenue which allows them to operate their business. And typically that comes through either marketing efforts, but for most companies they actually have a sales force of some way, shape, or size. And this sales force is specifically built to bring in dollars into the company, bring the dollars in to make people aware of the services and the goods that they provide. So the task of the salesperson is to persuade or introduce the goods or services to a potential buyer, which we would call a prospect. And so moving on to the next slide here, sometimes sales is a fairly broad term, so we like to kind of take a look at what sales is not. And what sales is not, it's not customer service. It's not simply just order taking. And what do we mean by that? A sales professional is someone who goes beyond just simply taking information down. What we find is that there's a lot of skills involved with being a sales professional. And one of the things that I personally recommend is to have the mindset for each salesperson to bring value into a relationship. The salesperson should always be looking at, hey, what are the needs of my customers? Let me understand them in depth, and let me add some piece of information that brings great value to them. And what does that really do is that actually, as the communication increases, we're building into relationships. So really, the way sales is nowadays is it's really built around the customer relationship. To me, the big game changer is the internet. Selling is not like a used car salesman many years ago where you just would kind of go in and a sales representative would approach you and intimidate you. Nowadays with the internet, information is increasing at a crazy speed. Information's always just kind of out there and increasing, and anyone with Google can find out lots of details and pieces of information about whatever they're researching. So what we're finding is that consumers are a lot more informed, and so the role of the salesperson has definitely changed. It's more to highlight the information that's valuable in interpreting the data. And so the salesperson here, kind of moving on to the next slide.
Wait,
there.
Before you go, though,
yeah.
Let's do a poll question.
Let's do that.
Let's find out from the
great.
audience what they think sales is.
All right, let's take a look.
So if our audience can answer this poll question for us. All right, is everybody done?
Yeah.
Is everybody done? Let's see. I think so. All right, so it looks like everybody's done. All right, the answer is all of the above. So now we can move on to the next slide.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. So this next slide, what sales is, and we tried to build a list here that kind of covered it all, and certainly prospecting. Let's just define what prospecting really is. Prospecting is communicating with a prospective client. It's finding out a customer that could really benefit from your goods or services, and it's making a list. Typically prospecting for us when we're involved with recruiting or selling career fairs, what our sales team does. Prospecting really is going out and maybe building a pretty comprehensive large list of clients kind of in an area or potential companies in a specific city. So for example, having a career fair in the Chicago area, we look at all the companies in Chicago that have sales teams and all the companies that are running different ads to recruit salespeople, because that's who our prospects are. Our prospects are companies who are looking to recruit salespeople. So prospecting is building that list, and then that certainly leads into what do you do once you have the list? Obviously, you want to introduce the company, and that's really what cold calling is. In sales, there's different types of cold calling, but primarily you'll have usually a phone call will be the introduction. And so that's actually picking up the phone and calling the company and introducing the services that you're offering. So in our circumstance, our situation, cold calling is actually letting them know about a career fair that's coming up that they can participate in as a hiring company, and introducing that specific event to the company. Now, there's other types of sales out there. It's not all just about an event necessarily, but it is raising awareness to someone who is a qualified prospect. That's what cold calling really is. And so here's where it's really important. Salespeople can definitely get into manipulation, and there's certainly people feel that way about the sales about the sales profession in general. That's what I meant to say. But really, the goal of the sales professional is just to influence and to make determinations. Could this client really benefit from what we are offering? And so it's influencing. It's providing the information that's vital for the client to make an informed decision. Again, we're looking at building value in the relationship. Closing is actually asking for the deal. And this is a critical part for every sales team. At the end of the day, you will be measured by the results that you produce. And so closing is actually asking for the order. And so in our circumstance, it would be actually asking the company to participate in the career fair, get that commitment from them. And so at the end of the day, all of this is all of the above is certainly the right answer. Everyone answered correctly. And building relationships is certainly the foundation of all sales. So let's move on to the next slide. So that was just a brief introduction there, and now I'm going to hand it back over to Tim, and he's going to jump right into actually coaching a sales team.
Yeah, sure. So now that we know what sales is and we have a really good working definition of what we're looking for when we go out and we're hiring a salesperson, someone who can build relationships, someone who can influence somebody without manipulating them. Now we bring them on board. We've made the offer, they've accepted the offer, we have them in our office, and now we have to coach them. Now we have to figure out what do we need to do to train them? What do they need to learn? How can we really set them up for success? So it all starts with asking questions. I think that a question pricks the conscience. And so as we ask good quality questions, remember, as we're recruiting salespeople, we're essentially selling them the opportunity. And now that they're on, we don't have to sell them so much the opportunity, but we need to understand what motivates them. We need to understand what makes them tick. And if we're going to coach them, the way that you would coach me is different than the way that you would coach John Doe or Dan DeHaan or Dee Reinhardt. We all would be coached different because we all respond to learning differently. So we need to ask questions, and we need to understand what motivates them. And some good questions to ask after you have a salesperson on board, or maybe even in the interview process is, hey, what keeps you up at night? What really causes you to stay awake? What are you thinking about all the time? And then as you start to coach them, really ask them, hey, what would you change? What would you change about yourself? What processes do you see, not only with the onboarding process, but now that you've been here, we're coaching you and we're learning what motivates you, what would you change? And as you get these answers and as you're listening to these the responses, you really start to learn and understand and know the person that you're interacting with. You'll know the person that you're coaching. And as you're learning the person that you're coaching, you'll really be able to formulate a plan as to the best way that you can really coach them. So listen, listen, listen. It's really the lost art of actually caring what people say. There's a big difference between hearing and listening. And so if we can understand as we're asking quality questions, questions like, hey, how are you growing? What are you growing in? A tendency oftentimes with a lot of people, and I've seen this not only within our own organization, is people love to point out problems. Very few people actually come to you with a solution. And so, hey, what are you growing in? If they mention a problem that they see, ask them a follow-up question. Hey, I'm really seeing this with the way that we're filling our pipeline. Okay, well, what do you think we should do about it? And if they, based on their answer, you'll really get to know them and see where their heart is at, and you'll understand what motivates them. Well, what are you growing in? Are you growing in your discipline with prospecting? Are you growing in your discipline with cold calling? Those are great ways to just get to know your sales team, and as you know them, you'll be able to coach them more effectively. So a great place to start is through creating an incentivized strategy. You base it on people, you base it on sales, and on other goals. For sure, as you're creating a strategy for coaching salespeople, you have to incentivize them. At the end of the day, you're talking to people that are money motivated. And typically, sales professionals are type A. They want to captivate a room. They want to wear a nice suit and drive a nice car. And so money has to play a part in that. And so how are you going to create a compensation plan that really incentivizes them, but it's fair for you as the employer too? So oftentimes, Dan or I will chat with a prospective candidate that will say, hey, I need to make a base salary of $100,000. Well, how much did you make last year? Well, my total earnings were $100,000. Well, what was your base salary? Well, it was 60. Well, why do you need a $100,000 base salary now? Uh, and as you're asking those questions, and you can build an incentivized strategy for the people that are on your team, and money does have to play a part in it. And from the other side, from a hiring company's perspective, you want to minimize your risk. Our sales professionals, they have a much lower base salary, but the earning potential is actually a lot higher because our risk is so much lower. And so we know for our business model, having a lower base salary with a higher performance bonus, it works out well for us. We're a small business. So understanding what's going to work for you as a hiring company, and you can obviously negotiate that as well, but you need to incentivize them with money. So it has to be some sort of performance-based, either commission, a bonus, a quarterly bonus. We do monthly commissions, we do quarterly commissions, or quarterly bonuses, and then we do a year-end thing as well. So understanding what that needs to look like, but you have to incentivize them with money. And then you have to incentivize activity as well. So many times people just aren't organized, and so they'll come in and they'll just swing for the fences, and they'll get lost in the clutter of just trying to sell. And so you really need to reward activity, and you need to incentivize activity. So we monitor phone calls, we monitor talk time, we monitor inbound calls, outbound calls, time on the phone, we monitor how many prospects are entered, how many deals are closed. Obviously we monitor dollars and cents, and through incentivizing them, it removes the stress of hey, you have to sell, you have to sell, you have to sell. Oftentimes there's a ramp-up time. And so for a new hire, I would really encourage you, focus more on the activity. The numbers will follow. And if you focus on the activity, the numbers will happen after that. If you lay the foundation of learning how to prospect well, learning how to leave good voicemails and interact with people on the phone well, and you reward that activity, the other stuff, the sales, the closing, that all will follow shortly after. And you don't be afraid to change the plan. Sometimes you have to modify it. Sometimes you have to change it based on the individual's needs. You have to modify it based on the company's needs. Maybe the economy is tanking a little bit, and you can't afford to pay that $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 base salary, but you still want to retain good quality sales professionals. So you come up with a plan where you can lower the risk of the business, but the earning potential is the same. They just have to close their deals. So it should sort of be a fluid thing. You don't want to change it often, but definitely don't be afraid to, if in dire circumstances, change it for the betterment of the organization. It's about the whole. And then I do believe...
Tim,
yeah, go for it.
We had a webinar recently on key performance indicators, and I think this would be a really good place to use some of those key performance indicators for your people to track that activity, and based on that activity, change the plan if something's not working properly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I was just chatting with a buddy who runs a call center in Arlington Heights, and they sell printers, and he had to modify it for just 2 of his sales reps based on the activity, based on the sales numbers. And so they looked at some key things that they were doing, and they incentivized them with that. And I'm curious to see the results. I haven't chatted with him yet, but I'm sure it'll work out. So, yeah, that's very true.
Great.
So moving right along, I think that it's good to, every now and then you want to incentivize people with, as you have a sales team, you've built your sales team, you're coaching them, you want to incentivize them with daily and weekly meetings, offer a challenge that has a reward. Sometimes we'll say, hey, if everybody makes 25 phone calls by noon, we're going out to lunch, it's on the company. If we close X amount of dollars in deals by 3 p.m. where everyone's cutting out early, or we're going to go golfing, or we're going to go get ice cream. And those are just little things that not only incentivize the people that are selling your product or service, but it also builds camaraderie, and it really helps to just create an environment where people long to work. So that sort of brings me to the practical coaching. It's not done in the game. It's the practice where people grow. And so oftentimes people will get on the phone, and we worked with a guy before. The first voicemail of the day is always the roughest, he would say. And he would make a cold call, and he'd hang up the phone call. He said, wow, I'm glad that's out of the way. That was a rough one. And it was every single day. He would say, that was just so tough. And he was in the game. And so instead of just having him call and make a really horrible voicemail leave a horrible voicemail first thing in the morning, hey, why don't you pick up the phone, leave yourself a voicemail. Practice, practice, practice. That's where people grow. People grow in the practicing of the things in which you're trying to instill in them. So as you're coaching them.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah, so oftentimes, whether it's an email, oftentimes, for instance, I'll have Dan or one of the other guys, one of the other managers here at United Career First stop by my desk. Hey, come take a look at this email before I send it. Or I'll fire it off to them. How does this come across to you? Am I being too hard? Am I pushing the envelope too far? Am I too close to the cliff? And it helps me hone my selling skills by practicing with the people around me. And it really does develop the craft of selling. So absolutely practice, practice, practice. And you need to create an environment where you can practice with your peers. And so leaving voicemails, we always do role play here. Those are great ways to practice. So it's really crucial to have a training plan in place, a coaching plan in place where you can actually practice without the possibility, or unfortunately, you may have to lose a deal over it. So if you can practice on people that aren't actually going to give you any money, it's better to do that for sure. So, and then review. Have a weekly meeting. We have weekly meetings with our sales staff. We review numbers. We offer challenges. The big focus is accountability. We want them to know that we're watching. And sure, there's freedom. There's a lot of freedom. You can work as long or as little as you want. We want to know where your numbers are at. We want to know that your activity is high. We want to challenge you. We want to know what you're growing on. But we want to hold you accountable on those things. So set a goal. Hey, next week I want you to do the X. I want you to pick one specific thing that you're going to work on in the next week or in the next quarter. I had a guy that works for us come into my office, and we were talking about this thing exactly. What's one thing that you want to work on? He said, I just don't feel like I'm very kind when people tell me no. He would get bent out of shape. It would rub him the wrong way, and he'd write them off. And I said, Joe, that person could potentially be a client in a month, in a year, in 3 months. So I really want you to focus on being kind when you don't receive the outcome that you're looking for. And that's so important in sales. Oftentimes people just write people off when they don't close the deal. There's all sorts of statistics out there that talk about how many times it takes, or how many calls it takes, or interactions it takes to actually close the deal. So, for instance, for Joe, it was just work on being kind. Work on saying, hey, no problem. If there's anything I could do differently, I want to know about it. So send a follow-up email after you lose the deal. And that was one thing that we implemented for Joe. Send a follow-up email. Ask them, is there anything I could have done differently? Ask them why they didn't choose to buy from you. And that's kindness. It lets them know that you care, and it really hones Joe's skill of just working on not taking it so personally. So listen. Again, as you're having these weekly meetings, listen to what's going on in your sales rep's mind. What are they struggling with? Are they not finding quality prospects? Are they not interacting with people that they should be interacting with. Maybe they're just not calling the right people. So you need to have a list of questions, a set of questions that you can point to and say, hey, where are you at with this? Where are you at with prospecting? Where are you at with new business development? Where are you at with retaining existing business? What's the retention rate of the people that have signed up in this specific market or have bought this product in the past? And so as you develop a list of questions to review in those weekly meetings, I would just challenge you to say, write down a few different questions based on what the sales rep is working on personally in regards to selling, but also professionally. What are they working on? Is it prospecting? Is it cold calling? Is it building relationship? Is it just being kind if you don't get the deal? So those are some great things to do in those weekly meetings. And then one thing that we do that's really neat is we have our sales rep at the beginning of the year, instead of putting a number out there for them, we want them to come to us with a number. How much money do you want to make this year? Okay. Oftentimes with sales, it's more than actually what you would place on them as a business owner. And if it's not, you can push back on them with that. But at the beginning of the year, we say we want you to create a business plan, and the business plan is going to include how much you want to earn. And so as you're talking about how much you want to earn, we know the commission structure, we know your base salary, we know how you're going to be paid monthly, quarterly, yearly. How much are you going to sell to get there? How are you going to sell? What industries are you going to focus on to get to that place to earn the income that you want to earn? And so essentially by pushing it off on them, they're creating their own roadmap. So it really builds and develops them as a leader, and really you're essentially multiplying yourself as a leadership person to the person that you're coaching. So in those yearly meetings, as they're creating a business plan, ask them to create a roadmap of earnings. Ask them to list 3 growth points. So as they're listing their 3 GPs, their 3 growth points, it could be, I want to grow in closing. My closing rate is not as high as it needs to be. Maybe it's their prospecting. They're not developing new business, and new business always starts with prospecting. So ask them what their growth points are, and then write that down, review it with them quarterly, monthly, for sure, at least every quarter, and then markets to penetrate. Hey, where do you want to grow the business? Where do you think we can grow as an organization? So, for instance, United Career Fairs does 16 events a month across the country. Is there a market where you think we can tap into that really will grow the business? And so those are some great things to chat through as you have your sales reps develop their yearly business plan. Essentially, it's a business plan for their life, and it just incorporates the company within that. And I feel like it helps them a lot more than you just setting out a number for them to hit. So train together as a team.
They become integrated as part of. They become integrated as part of the team by putting their own numbers out there.
Totally.
They
Absolutely.
take more ownership in the business.
Totally. They sure do. And that's, when people buy in and when they see that they have something at stake. Hey, you know what, Ross, you're the one that came to me with this number. This is the number that you said you wanted to make. I didn't tell you. It makes it easier to lead that person as well, and they create that roadmap. And you're 100% right. They buy in, they see it, and they feel a sense of ownership. Like, I created this. This is mine. This is my book of business. This is my plan. So the way that you can get there is through ongoing training. We get together every single morning, and we just have a little time where we just sort of chat, talk through the day. We actually will just spend just a few minutes chatting about what went on yesterday, what's going to go on today, who are you going to connect with. We use that time to encourage one another. We actually pray together as a company in the morning like that. It's a great opportunity to bounce ideas off of each other as well. And hey, I did this. I sent this email, or I tried this subject line for an email that we blasted out, and it worked really, really well. And so it builds camaraderie. It challenges each other to grow as well, because if I, in that morning meeting, say, hey, you know what, I closed this massive deal yesterday. This is how I did it. Somebody else is going to hear that and say, wow, I really need to think about doing things that way, or maybe I should have done it that way. And it does challenge and pushes the end goal of more revenue forward. So train together as a team. It ultimately builds camaraderie. Send them practical tips. We're always passing along articles on sales. We're always posting sales statistics in cubicles and sending along jokes about sales. I think this quote is really funny. Remember, the secret to selling is sincerity. Once you can fake that, you've made it. And it's really a funny thing, but it's also sort of true. So it's good to have fun at work. The grind of sales and picking up the phone and calling people all the time can really wear people down. And so you want to create an environment that's fun. It's okay to be practical joking. You don't want to be a frat house for sure, but if people don't enjoy where they show up to work, they're not going to last that long. So create an atmosphere that is enjoyable for people to work at, and try hard. As the leader of an organization, that really, that burden is solely on your back. So you need to be sending them articles. You need to motivate them. You need to think of practical ways that you can really develop them. So Danny's going to take over and talk about retaining salespeople now, and I will go ahead and let him take over.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Lots of great stuff there. So getting right into retaining salespeople. Usually the next challenge that any business owner will face after they hire somebody is, how in the world do you keep them plugged into your organization? So we're going to try to survey that a little bit right now. But what's essential is to have a great connection with that salesperson and to understand what motivates them. A great example would be Tim and myself. We're both business guys, but very different in personality. And so I cannot think as a manager that what motivates me would be adequate to motivate Tim. And the same goes for every other person on our team. Is yes, they're a collective unit, but you want to look at every person as an individual and get to know them really well and get to know what motivates them. We have on our team, our salespeople, we have certainly individuals that are pretty much mostly motivated by money, and that's a lot of salespeople. But we also have other people that are motivated just by recognition, motivated by seeing a job well done, motivated by any combination of things. And so as you're a manager, you want to be mindful of that, how each individual works. And so if it is just a word of encouragement, you want to definitely make a point to give them a little handwritten note, or pull them into your office and, hey, I see that you're working really hard, really appreciate all that you do for us. And so that really is building value into your team. I mean, this is absolutely critical, and we want people coming to work every day happy, because people who feel valued, they feel like they will feel better during their day, and what you'll see is their production will actually increase. So you do that through recognition. Also, some companies can afford trips, and so they'll send their President's Club members down to some wonderful tropical places sometimes. Definitely financial bonuses and spiffs for sure are great motivators for people, and when they get that cash in their hands, or when they see that check deposited into their bank account, they understand that their work paid off, and you want that correlation to definitely be evident. So, and in personal and public appreciation, I mean, sometimes it's during your meetings in the morning, like we normally have, is letting everyone know that people are working hard in this company, and to acknowledge that publicly in front of everyone. Sometimes it's private recognition, sending them an email, hey, thanks for staying late the other day. I know that cost you something, and I really appreciate that. I can see what you're doing. Some companies that we work with that have larger sales staffs will definitely sometimes put up a board. Here's what everyone's doing across all 50 of our different locations, and here's the #1 person in the entire country. We do a lot of fairs. We talk to a lot of sales directors, and a lot of times, they'll say, hey, I was the #1 rep, and they knew that because it would be put up and displayed to everyone in the organization. But the key is to always be ever mindful of how are they getting recognized, and what are we doing to make them feel good about what they do. So that's definitely what we recommend. And then obviously you want to address compensation. Okay, so and part of that, in my opinion, is to understand what is the market bearing for sales representatives or other employees within other companies that offer the same goods and services as we offer. You want to have an understanding of what is the marketplace offering. There's a lot of times we'll consult with companies that are looking for the top talent, but they're not willing to compensate, and they're not even in the right ballpark sometimes, and they wonder why they struggle to keep people. And so typically what happens in that situation when we consult with companies in that situation is they sometimes can hire people, but what happens is, sure enough, 6-9 months later, they lose that person, and in the long run, they end up spending more money because they have to go and backfill those positions, and the business lost with the downtime or their other employees being overworked definitely comes into play. So compensation can sometimes be a big piece of that. And so as Tim alluded to earlier, everyone that works here has a performance-based element to their job description and to their compensation, and even to our support people. We actually have goals for them on various areas that we think that are accurate, and we build that into how their compensation is going to work. Here's the part that's guaranteed for you. Now here's the part that's variable. Here's our goals. And we want you to define what you'd like to earn this year. So I think as an executive team, it's always important to design a compensation plan that is fair for everyone. It's easy to become greedy as a business owner. It's also easy just to throw lots of money and believe that just solves your problem and just to throw money at a situation. That is not the case. I've been a part of a business where I lost my job because financially the company was not run well, and part of that was because of overpaying employees. And so that problem is a common issue for businesses, and so I think that for us, we recommend an annual review of performance and compensation of all employees, including the owners of the business. And for us, that goes to myself as well as the other managing partners of our business. And so we definitely recommend that. And what you're trying to do with that is just a survey. Am I relevant with the compensation offering that we are putting forth? So what you want to do also with keeping salespeople, this is absolutely incredible, is you want to reward those who are succeeding in their role. You want to increase the amount of tasks that they have because you don't want them to become stagnant or feel like there is a ceiling where you're at, because that will be commonly something that motivates people to start to look elsewhere. And so what you want to do is take those who are showing promise and you want to make them a leader. You want to replicate yourself in that person so that they start to lead very, very well. And so a lot of that is figuring out what does that roadmap look like. So you increase the amount of tasks, you bring them in, you consult with them, you ask them the questions, what do you think we should do? What you're trying to do there is to let them see how that process works, so that they can hear the questions that you typically ask within your head, and what you're doing is you're cultivating in them the desire to think critically and helping them to do that and to get better at thinking critically. So that comes down to the end of our presentation here. It looks like we're at the questions portion. So Dee, how do you want to run this?
Well, I haven't seen any questions come in that we haven't been able to answer. So what we'll do is we'll leave that pod open for us for a little while. I apologize to Daniel for not having his information up on the screen, but we do have Tim Neff and Daniel DeHaan, who are partners with United Career Fairs. We want to thank them for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. And as we go to our closing slide, we have a couple of links here. We have United Career Fairs, where you can find out more information about their company, and then a few other links here for Illinois WorkNet. If you'd like to take a moment to answer the poll questions for us, if you did not already download the handout, it is there. We will leave the question pod open for our participants for just a few minutes. One of the things that we need to explain to everybody who's listening to the recording is that if you do attend the webinars live, you can ask your own questions at the time of the webinar. So that's just an incentive for our participants to participate in person. One of the questions that we did have are what are the job tasks, and those are all defined basically by the specific job themselves. So for salespeople, it is meeting sales quotas, making phone calls, closing deals. Those are the job tasks at hand for those jobs. So that does hopefully answer the question that we did get from one of our participants. So in closing, would either Tim or Dan like to say anything else to our audience today, or those who will be listening to the webinar on our recording? Is there anything that you'd like to say in closing to our audience?
Yeah, I would just say thanks. This is Tim. Thanks so much for having us. And you know, if anybody has any questions on the slides or and building a business plan, we always like to help other entrepreneurs out or people in leadership just grow in their leadership. And we always want to make ourselves available for that. So feel free to reach out to us. So.
Great, great. Dan?
Yeah, thanks, Dee. This was a blast. Yeah, it's always a pleasure to work with you and to be with you again. You know, in closing, we didn't touch a whole lot on recruiting, which is more my specialty, but I would recommend on that is with that is to be always cognizant, especially if you're earlier on in running a sales team or even building a sales team. You're asking the question, how do I find salespeople? Which is a huge question. I would recommend just for everyone out there who's a business owner or a manager at some level, just recommend that you be very mindful of your personal network. Recruiting in general is it can become very expensive very quickly. You know, what job boards do I go to? You know, how do I find these people? And so often, some of the best hires you can find are people that you already know, friends of family members, friends of any sort of social networking groups that you're a part of, or people that you play softball with or soccer with or what have you. And so a lot of that is just of recruiting is letting people know that you're starting to hire and encouraging them to tell their friends. I hear that time and time again. That's where the best hires come from, and that's definitely the most cost-effective way to find hires. And I know that that's a common question for people, especially trying to staff a sales team. Is where in the world do I find a sales representative? Well, sure. There's lots of things you can pay for, and there's recruiters you can pay for, job fairs you can go to, or putting ads up on the newspaper or out there on Indeed or something like that. But what I would encourage before doing any of that, because that takes a lot of time and a lot of money, I would encourage you to start telling your family members and let your spouse know and let their friends know and get the word out there. And as you do that, what you'll often find is people will start to approach you that are looking for a position that fit what you're looking for, and they're coming from a personal recommendation. So typically you can have a little more confidence in hiring them. So I definitely just wanted to make that point real quick because I think that's real valuable. And yeah, Dee, it's great to be on here presenting with you.
Well, thank you very much again, gentlemen. We will be posting this recording on our Illinois WorkNet channel as well as on our YouTube channel. So watch for more information from our Startup